Do you have an underbite? Do you go to the bathroom and don't flush? Do you like dirty jokes? Do you drink cheap beer? Or even worse of all that, do you own orcs? Today, I'm gonna show you how to paint these suckers and make them look good. For this tutorial, we're gonna start from scratch. We're gonna get some miniatures and we're gonna paint them and finish them completely. We're gonna do the bases and everything. Some of them look like these. They are second-hand miniatures. This is not that bad. But then I have guys like these ones, which had to go through a bath of brake fluid. And as you can see, they look kind of bad. I'm gonna show you how to deal with miniatures like this one. Prepare them, prime them, paint them, and base them, and finish them off. So you're gonna see the whole process from 0 to hero. Alright, so why second-hand miniatures? Well, for starters, they are cheap. You can find them on eBay for really cheap prices. In this case, I have these guys, which, as I said, they look alright, but these ones, they need a lot of love. In this case, I already cleaned the mold lines, and this is the first thing that you should do right after you unpaint them. Washes and mold lines don't go together, so get rid of all of them. I recommend two different tools. One of them is a file, like this one, and you need a blade, like this one. Any kind of blade, as long as it's sharp and you can use it for doing the job. What I do is apply the blade horizontally towards the miniature, and just scratch the surface until I'm comfortable with the results. There are some here. Just scratch. Now files are great. You just do this and you're gonna get rid of most of the mold lines in no time at all. What I do is a combination of both file and knife. So I make sure that I get all the mold lines away. Now you might be using washes or not, it doesn't matter. It makes a world of a difference to get rid of mold lines. I know I say this a lot, but these small details, preparing the minis, make a big difference on the final product. As you can see, there is a lot of crap right here. This is all the mold lines and all the different stuff that I got from my miniatures. These are the orcs that I will proceed to put sand on the bases and then paint. Before priming, it's a good idea to wash your miniatures. So what I do is just put some soap on top of them, warm water, and brush. The next step after cleaning the miniatures is to glue the sand to the bases. I use white glue, and what I do is I get one of them, just put some white glue on a brush, extend it on the base, and then after I do so, I will dip it in the sand and just get rid of the excess by tapping it. And that's it. After you're done doing this and all the bases have dried, I repeat the process with the glue, so I seal the sand, and that will help to keep it on its place during the painting process and the gaming abuse that they're going to be subject to. In this case, you don't need pure glue. You can mix it with a little bit of water. It will do the same trick, and it will help you paint it. After that, you only need them to dry, and you are ready for the next step. Well, there is only one thing left to do, and as of now, is to wait. I'm gonna proceed to prime them. Don't put the spray can too close to it. We're gonna start with the metals, and those two metals that I'm gonna use are lead belcher and Gehenna skull. I'm gonna start with lead belcher, so I'm gonna do all the weapons, all the armor, and some of the details like nails and whatnot with this color. And the first thing that I'm gonna use is an old brush. This brush is thick and it can hold a lot of paint, but it also can take a lot of abuse because it's not a detailed brush. I don't want to use a good one for this. One simple trick that will help you a lot if you're doing a process like this is trying to get similar miniatures together and paint them in batches. Okay, so in this case I have 4 different bodies, and that means that if I do all the same bodies together, I can keep track of the different parts of those miniatures much more easy than if I start going back and forth between different models. So this repetitive process means that you can save a lot of time just by doing the same steps over and over again. After I'm done with the silver metal, I'm gonna start with the Gehenna's gold, and I'm gonna apply this color to some of the parts of the weapons and other details. If you have been watching my channel, you probably know what's the next step, and of course it's Seraphim Sepia. I'm gonna use the old brush that I was using before, and I'm just gonna shade all the metals. And I'm gonna choose some parts from the Orcs, namely the leather, just to give it a coat of shading as well. The boots, the leather, all those things will be brown. For the next step, after I'm done with the Seraphim Sepia, it's Agrex Earth Sage. So I'm gonna try to darken all the metals with this color, and also some of the leathers that I've been working with. Do not contemplate the fact of being, careful here. Just go ahead and stain everything without any care whatsoever. Metals look great when you use both Seraphim Sepia and Agrex because you give them a lot of tones. And that's exactly what you should be looking to achieve when painting all metals. Some of the parts I decide not to darken, like some of the leather, since I will use a different approach. And here we are back at it. Now the next step, I'm gonna paint the tunics, and I'm gonna go ahead and just do my usual black. We're gonna start with Drakenhof Nightshade. If you have watched my videos on goblins, and if you haven't, I recommend you do so. I paint my black using a first coat of Drakenhof Nightshade. Nightshade gives you a base coat that will look like a bluish gray, and afterwards, when we do the second coat with Nuln Oil, you will achieve that kind of black that looks like it has highlights, gray highlights. Now that I've done the tunics, my next step is Cassander Yellow. Now I do it in this moment because I have to use the red next, and red will be used in some places that I have to paint now yellow. So with Cassander Yellow, I'm gonna proceed to paint the skin of all the orcs as soon as possible so I can move to the next step. This is what we should have. So I'm gonna do this with all 10 orcs, and while you wait, get ready for the next step. For the next step, I'm going to use blood leather. Now blood leather is a great glaze that has a red tone to it, and I'm gonna use that in my orcs in the lower lip to give it a little bit more, distinction and more tonalities, and also on the eyes. I'm also gonna use it in some other details, such as, in this case, the pants. I think red is a great color for orcs. It has a lot of contrast against the green of the skin, and it also gives a lot of tones and colors to work with. Blood leather is a great base for painting red with inks, and I strongly recommend that you get that wash or something similar to it. There is a guy here with a head attached to his belt. Gotta find him. There he is. And I'm gonna use this wash as well over here. I'm gonna be using the colors that I use for my army, which are blue, red and black for the clothing, and a lot of metals. The green will be, of course, the skin, and anything else will have leathers and medals. If you are aiming to get some extra points because of your painting score in tournaments, it is a good idea to actually go ahead with a colorful color scheme. It attracts the attention of judges and other players, which is exactly what you want to achieve whenever you paint an army for, you know, competitive gaming. The next step, I'm gonna do Gilliman blue on some of the clothing that I haven't painted red, and this will go, for instance, in the pants of this guy. If you don't have Adrian blue, which is the color that I'm gonna use to darken this particular part in my miniatures, I strongly recommend that you do the blue painting before the Drakenhof Nightshade, because Drakenhof Nightshade will help you darken this. So once you're done with this, you can go ahead and just wash the whole thing. For the next step, I'm gonna use Raglan Flesh Shade. There are some details in these miniatures that they require a different color for, some leather and things like that, and one of them is the drums. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put these here. It doesn't take long to do it, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish it. Now that's it. I'm gonna do the head that this guy is having hang to his side, and this is where you can see where you can use Flesh Shade. Flesh Shade is actually quite useful. I've painted my giants with it, and if I haven't used this, it will take a lot of coats just to get the flesh color right. My next step, I'm going to use Fuegan Orange. In this case, what I'm going to do is darken the pants a little bit, get a orangish tone to them. This is the red that I have used in the shoes of the goblins that I painted. Check the tutorial if you want to learn how to paint goblins with this technique and my color scheme. And I think it's a nice color. To use this color for the shoulder pad here and for the belly plate on the boss. Nice thick coat of the wash, and it's good to go. Just let it dry. Next step, I'm going to use Cardboard Crimson. It creates this deep, rich color that I love for my banners. and I think that it looks outstanding on these miniatures. The difference, as you can see, is quite evident. So yeah, I'm gonna finish this and then go to the next step. After I'm done with the reds is finishing the blues, and I'm using Adrian blue. This wash is not made anymore, so if you don't have access to it, then I recommend that you use Darkening Nightshade. I'm gonna use this one for my blue. It's gonna darken it and give it the shading that I want. It's time to paint the skin. So just like with my goblins, I'm gonna use Weight Watchers green. But the difference between my orcs and goblins is that goblins only have one coat of this paint, while orcs are gonna have two. Now orcs, I want them to look more green, darker green, because of course they are bigger and somehow it seems logical to be, darker. The bigger the creature in the army is, the darker the skin is. All you need to know right now is just paint green and wait until it dries so you can give a second coat. That's all you have to do with it. So I've done 2 coats of the green ink on the green wash on this guy, and this guy is not yet done. As you can see, there is a small difference in the color. This looks more yellowish and this looks a little bit darker, and this is exactly why I'm doing the 2 coats. So I gotta do all the orcs like this guy, and after I'm done with this we can go to the next step. For the next step, I'm going to use Nuln Oil and I'm going to paint the tunics. Nuln Oil will darken Darkening Nightshade and create a nice black hue with grey highlights. Alright, so the next step, I'm gonna use once again Cassandra yellow because I want to paint the skull on the flag. I do this now because on next step, what I'm going to do is use different washes and inks to create a little bit more darker leather and other stuff. And I'm gonna use those same inks to draw a boundary, a line between the skull and the rest of the flag. And I'm also gonna use the same color to do something else, and that's to paint the hair on the skull, not the skull, the head, the hair on this head yellow, because then with the use of another wash we're gonna create a dirty blonde or a blonde hair for this unfortunate guy who happened to cross the path of these orcs. This one in particular. Yep, that's it. Alright, so we're gonna go to the next step now. Next step is using different inks like these old ones. If you have some of these, keep them and make sure that you keep them like, gold. They are really useful for this technique. I'm gonna start with chestnut ink. Chestnut ink, I use it for several things, and one of them is go through each one of these miniatures and paint the eyes. So that will create a nice boundary between the skin and the eyes. And then I have some bags and things that I want to paint a little different, and just gonna pick some leathery parts in these miniatures and use these different inks for each one of them. Before I'm gonna use a different wash now. This is flesh wash. It's not as red as chestnut ink, so it works a little bit different. And I'm gonna use it in different parts. In this one, I want to use it in this fur and create a more striking shading, because as of now it's kind of pale, and I want it to be a little bit more striking in that regard. The process is the same. Just choose some of these parts and paint on top of them with this. The wash will go through the crevices and will tint the whole area as well, creating a new distinctive color. Particular one, as I said before, I want to create some boundaries between the yellow and the red, so I'm gonna draw that carefully with the ink so it's not that fade out. Brown ink is the darkest of the three, and I want to use it more or less in all these minis for darkening their shoes, and also in some other places that I haven't darkened yet, and I want to create a different, tone, like this satchel lower back here. I'm going to paint the nails on these guys with this ink. Yes, to create a more striking boundary between the skin and those, also in between the teeth if I don't feel like they are not dark enough. Right, so this is what I'm gonna be doing, painting things that I want to go darker and get them ready for the next step. It's time to start highlighting the metals. Now, this is completely optional, as you know, but in my opinion it makes the miniature look much better. What I do is I just go ahead and find the metallic parts of the miniature and give it some highlights here and there. Mainly the borders, because those are the parts that will create the volume, and they are the ones that tend to be overused. And for the weapons, what I do is I work a lot on the edge. Just repeat the process with each miniature, and we will get to the final highlight on the metals with the next color. Done with the miniatures, and one of the last steps is picking up the edges of the blades with a little bit of this fabulous color, Rimfam Steel, which is a really clear silvery tone. So I'm not gonna overdo this, I'm just gonna go ahead and do the most striking edges of all the things that they have, like these spikes here and the blades, nothing else. And then also we're gonna work with the gold. Just give it a couple of highlights, because otherwise it might look as if it was a brown. Just a small highlight here and there. Now remember, we are not painting characters or miniatures that are going to be displayed individually. These are units. So this is already a good level. It just needs one more detail after this. Well, two actually, but it's basically done. So I'm gonna be doing this in some places, and that's it. For the next step after the metals, I'm going to use white scar, white color. And with this one, what I'm going to do is pick up the teeth and the nails of the orcs, just to give them an extra highlight. I'm using a fine detail brush here, because I just want to put a little bit of paint on those things, no more. Attracts the attention of the viewer to the face, which is a good feature usually. On this guy's plate, I'm going to paint the eyes white. I want them to look like a motif common to orcs in Citadel in Games Workshop universe, which is called the Evil Sun. Since this guy has got his face covered by the helmet, I think there is a need to create another focal point to, you know, make it more interesting. So that's what I've done. That this is the next step. Flash Gits yellow with a detail brush to paint the eyes. So I just need a drop of that paint and just really carefully put a small dot in the eyes. And this way we got our orcs facing and looking at the things that they have to hit. Even though these last steps are optional, you should totally do the eyes. In some places, when you play tournaments, they have rubrics for painting awards. And one of the things that I've seen quite often is the detail step in the rubric. This guy has nothing to be painted. So the detail step in the rubric, one of the things that the judges usually look at are for the eyes being painted. And this will give you some extra points, or maybe even bag you a painting award if the competition is not too fierce. I'm gonna use this same paint and make sure that the design is exactly as I want. Alright, there you go. I'm gonna use Druchii Violet. I've seen that some of my heads have an open mouth and there is a tongue right there that I want to color. Druchii Violet, if you paint one single coat, gives you this pinkish color, which is great for the tongues on orcs. And this guy's gums as well. So I'm gonna pick up that and make sure that his gums are healthy by orc standards. Violet also works great on reds, and I'm gonna use it to darken this area around his eyes and the nostrils of this plate in here as well. Around the eyes, you know, to make it look more interesting, more like a cadaver, and around the neck. Alright, one last detail. using black, I'm going to get here and paint those eyes. And now we can go to doing the bases. Now we're gonna finish the miniatures, and in order to finish them, we have to do the bases. In my opinion, this is a simple method and it works just fine. So the first step in making the bases is painting them with Rhinox hide. It's a dark brown, and you need to get the right consistency to go through the sand. Use an oil brush, as I said in all the videos, and just paint the sand. That's all. So I'm gonna do these on all 10 miniatures, and after that we are going to the next step on the bases. We need to let them dry. It's really important that you get this paint well dry so you can go to the next step. Okay, I'm really excited now. This is the last 2 steps of the tutorial. So what I do is I get some of these Ushapti bone paint, and with an old brush I do a dry brush on the sand. The sand has been painted in my miniatures. I'm just painting the bases, and some people use different colors, but I like black because it's so neutral that it doesn't matter on what table you're gonna use them, it's gonna be looking alright. So I'm gonna be doing this with all my 10 miniatures, and that will be the tutorial for today.